Yeah. Happy New Year again.
You ready, Kelly? I think we're good. All right, well, welcome everyone. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Glad to see everybody back in here. It was quite a trip into the Poughkeepsie Water Treatment Plant today because there was no kids in the out on the road. So, I mean, it was like I thought I was in the wrong place. Anyways, thank you all for coming. Thank you for joining the Hudson 7 Drinking Water Council's hybrid monthly meeting. Today is Wednesday, January 8th, right? And so my name is Gary Bassett. I am the mayor for Village Rhinebeck and also the chair of the Hudson 7. Hudson 7 hybrid meetings will be live streamed on the Hudson 7's YouTube channel, and the public is advised to subscribe to this channel. Our in-person meetings occur here at the Poughkeepsie Water Treatment Facility located at 3431 North Road, Poughkeepsie, New York. Public comment is allowed both in person and remotely. Please visit our website to learn how you can provide public comment by visiting www.hudson7.org and visit our meeting page. So we're going to take a roll call tonight. So in attendance, we just FYI, we do have a quorum, but I'm going to start with Rebecca on this side of the table.
Rebecca Martin, Source Water Protection Coordinator.
Oh, what's my, Devin Rigolino. I serve as the Dutchess County's representative on the council and vice chair.
Dan Shapley, Riverkeeper, Technical Advisor.
Richard Distil, City of Poughkeepsie.
Hello, Nick Butler, Port Human Water Superintendent, Town of Sopus.
Eric Weinstock of Town of Hyde Park.
Ann Shershin, Town of Poughkeepsie.
John Lipscomb, recently retired from Riverkeeper, but still interested in the river runs.
Absolutely.
Thanks for having me.
And I'm Don Ginobili, Laboratory Director here and the Technical Advisor.
All right, so thank you, everybody. We do have a quorum. Oh, yes, I forgot. Everybody on the screen. Elizabeth, you're in my top left.
Hi, everybody. Elizabeth Spinzia, Supervisor of Rhinebeck and Treasurer of the Council. Hi, John Lipscomb, and congratulations.
Shannon?
Hi, Shannon Roback, Riverkeeper, Technical Advisor. Hey, everyone. Happy New Year.
Mike?
Hey, my name is Mike Forging with the New York State Department of Health.
Top left.
Hi,
This is Mike's.
This is his name.
Hi, John Lipscomb, and congratulations.
Okay,
Shannon.
Hi, Shannon
So-
Roback, Riverkeeper, Technical Advisor. Hey, everyone. Happy New Year.
hang on 1 second, a little bit of a technical issue.
Mark Forging with the New York State Department of Health.
There you go. Well
It's
said.
playing back.
Yeah.
There we go. So Mike, could we start over with you?
Sure, my name is Mike Forging. I'm with the New York State Department of Health.
Thank you, Mike. Amanda? Hello, Amanda.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. Amanda Laval, Ulster County.
Thank you. And who's on for the town of Esopus?
Hi, it's Danielle Freer, Supervisor of the Town of Esopus.
Hey, Danielle, hello.
Hey,
So we're going to kind of go out of order a little bit today, rather than doing the traditional things. We have a special guest this evening. And as we all know, John Lipscomb recently retired. Congratulations on your new employment. I hope the pay is good.
I am so far. Sit point shit.
Oh, you love your boss, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Who's your boss? There you go. So I've invited John only because there's a wealth of knowledge right here sitting across the table from me and at the table with all of us to kind of share a little bit of what he's observed over the years. There was a lot that John did with the anchorages to help us through that process, and a little bit of an update on the anchorages. John would be appreciative. And then also kind of like, what should we care about? Right? Who care? What should we as a group organization? Some ideas to be looked at. So I'm going to give you as much time as you need.
What's for breakfast? That's a mistake with me.
I know.
Dan didn't tell you that. All right, so just to set this, thank you very much for having me. So to set this up a little bit.
Excuse me, can everybody hear John okay? Okay.
Yeah, my voice is not strong, but it'll work. Reason I'm here is Rebecca and I were talking, I'm volunteering for an initiative that Rebecca has started, which I will mention. And in the course of it, we discussed Hudson 7 and some ideas came out. She said, well, why don't we bring those ideas to the front? And so she contacted Gary, and so here we are. So I just want to say up front that these are just thoughts and for your consideration. That's it. And but some of them, since I'm not online every time you meet, some of them you may have discussed years ago, and some might be new ideas that you want to consider. So Anchorage is first. So as we all went through that, I won't spend a lot of time on where we are, except we know that Congressman Ryan's legislation is in effect. I was dismayed with the legislation, frankly, because I think it's got a loophole in it the size of a tunnel. And that is that the Coast Guard has said that no vessel may anchor except in the designated anchorages. Up here, the only one is at Hyde Park. Any vessel. So when I saw that, I contacted Ryan's office, et cetera. And I said, that means the guy fishing for striped bass can't anchor. That means the schooner Apollonia can't anchor. That means no riverkeeper can't anchor. Nobody can anchor. And the word that came back from our legal team is that the Coast Guard has verbally committed to not enforcing against smaller vessels, whether they're commercial or recreational. So the large vessels, they say they will enforce against, the smaller ones not. I don't think that's a rock solid piece of legislation to stand on, but for right now, it's working. And the advice to me was be quiet, John. But I fully anticipate the possibility that it will come back, especially with the new administration in Washington. The industry wants more anchorages. If they had a sympathetic ear in Washington, then I'm sure they would consider upending that legislation. Or, which is what I'm surprised they haven't done, is basically say to the Coast Guard, this is unequal enforcement. The law says no vessel. And all last year, recreational vessels were anchoring. Yeah, mooring fields like Chelsea Yacht Club, the moorings at Beacon Harbor, all of those are not designated anchorages that have no designation, nothing. There are several types of designation, but go a lot. I can come up with many examples that have no designation. So under the law, they can be enforced. So we just have to watch that. In the meantime, so my thoughts are in the meantime. All right. I started thinking about it. The reason we got involved in anchorages is because we were concerned about the possibility of more spills, right? It's not the vessel's anchoring. Yes, for Hudson 7, they present a risk to an anchor strike on a pipe, but that's less likely than that's less horrific than a spill. So it was all about spills in the first place. So now what can we do to keep? This is my thinking. It's just for your food for thought. How can we keep the conversation about anchorages and the concern over spills live until a new administration, approves different laws? All right. So we can't just go to sleep, is my opinion. So here are just a few thoughts. And I'm trying to be efficient and tight. The Coast Guard, we have in the past, Hudson 7 has engaged the Coast Guard. I think it's time to do it again. obviously now it wouldn't be about a rule on anchorages. It would be to say to the Coast Guard, here, Captain of the Port, you know, we continue at Hudson 7 to be very concerned about the consequences of a major spill. And so we would like to hear the update from the Coast Guard on when the new area contingency plan will be done. It was due to be done. The last one was 2016. It's a 5-year interval. It's in federal legislation that they do them every 5 years. So they're late.
This year.
5 years from
No, I mean, but this is, we know that it's gonna come this year.
We've been told
We've
that they're
been told
working
it will
on it.
be, yeah.
They've been working on it. So Neil Gully, who went with me to many of these area committee meetings, these are the meetings of stakeholders who are interested in spill response. He recently went to one and they've said they're working on it, they're changing the format. The point is, again, it's just an idea. Contact the Coast Guard, and if you want contacts, we have them. And say, you know, we'd like to have a presentation on the area contingency plan. The area contingency plan is this giant book on how they're going to respond to a spill in the New York Harbor, which extends from the port to Troy. And just by asking, you're already doing good work because they know you're watching. So just asking is already progress. It should be a collaborative, in my opinion, relationship with the Coast Guard. They're not the enemy. They've been good for us to work with at Riverkeeper. But so we want to say, what's the status of the the Area Contingency Plan, the ACP? And in the 2016 version, the worst case scenario, which I've sent to Hudson 7 in the past, it's a horrific draft spill case that would, in their 2016 ACP, it occurs up at Kingston. It's a massive spill right off your water plant. And so we want two things. We want to know whether the worst case spill scenario is going to change. Prior to the 2016 ACP, the worst case spill scenario was in the Port of New York because they figured that the worst case spill was an economic shutdown of the port. Our involvement helped them have a worst case economic scenario and a worst case spill scenario. We want to be sure that the worst case spill scenario, now that they're sort of making the ACPs more generic over the nation, we want to make sure that the specifics don't get taken out. And then we want to advocate, we want to say, okay, here was the spill you identified in 2016, and the idea was that the spill response community should be prepared to respond to that level of accident. I frankly don't believe it's possible, but we want to ask them, we're unlikely to get it, but we want to ask them for a spill drill right in the heart of the Hudson 7, right near the Hyde Park anchorage. There's a logic to it. And we want to ask them, we don't necessarily get it, but we want to ask for a simulant. I've been to a number of drills. Dan and I inspired, I should say, a spill drill on the Mohawk, but it was a desktop drill. There was no timeline. There was no rolling out of any assets. And the problem with the Hudson, if it was Lake Champlain, it's one thing. But the Hudson is this moving system, and response is going to be really hard. So by asking for the ACP, by maintaining the worst case spill scenario in it, by asking for a spill drill, we won't necessarily get all of that, but we're elevating the issue. And I should say that I would make all the outreach to the Coast Guard in copying federal and state elected officials, county to state to federal, so that when the Coast Guard reads your email, they realize that it's not just between Hudson 7 and the Coast Guard, it's between this whole reach of the valley and the elected officials that represent the public, and then the state and federal elected officials. So first step for me, if I was going to run with this, would be to get for each of these opportunities, if you choose to pursue them, I would find have Ryan's office designate a person, have, you know, figure out who's gonna be our elected official partner, who our elected official partner is gonna be in these conversations, so that the conversations, just by having elected officials on the email, power of the relationship is multiplied. So, Grill, I would be asking the Coast Guard, so that the communities can be prepared. What today, based on your knowledge today, Coast Guard, what are the cargoes moving on the Hudson? What are the cargoes? Which ones are liquid, which are solid, which are stone? You're not too worried about stone, but you're worried about almost everything else. Liquid cargoes being super scary, but so I would ask, what are the cargoes? Then I would ask again, a lot of these questions, the point is they've been asked before, and the idea is to keep them on the table. So they're part of the conversation. What is the spill liability that the vessel operators carry? And you've got every right to ask that, because if you have to shut down a plant or you have to truck in water or whatever it is, who are you gonna send that bill to? And if there's limited liability, which is what I think is the case, then you have a great argument to say, well, then we need to maybe restrict certain cargoes or certain seasons or certain activity. It opens the door to further steps. And my last note on this one, actually, I lied. 3 more notes. One would be, I would urge you to partner with Riverkeeper on this, because we have my time, it's 15 years working with the Coast Guard. Worked on that area contingency plan the first time around. Actually had Coast Guard staff ride down the whole river with us, so they could see every marsh inlet, every marina, and they created these, they're called GRPs, geographic response plans, that are about 5-mile reach of river, each one. They were hand drawn before concept. Now they're, GIS, Google Earth based. They have, they're so the responders can get them on their phone. They don't have to have a notebook. So invite Riverkeeper in is my suggestion, because but I want to stress that the main power here is Hudson 7. You have more power in this conversation than any other group that I can think of, because you represent the public, because drinking water is such an undisputed right. And because you have all these communities with your relationships with the elected officials in the state and in DC, the Coast Guard is going to respond more vigorously to Hudson 7 than to Riverkeeper alone. But if you have Riverkeeper in your back pocket, you can get some support. Other 2 things that are related but different, because it's all about spills. There was the accident in Baltimore, the bridge. Right after that happened, Congressman Ryan was interested in that. And I was asked to make a list of all the bridges that lack the protection needed to avoid the kind of disaster that happened in Baltimore. And so I made this inventory. I'm happy to share it. But these bridges right here have no fender islands around them. And the cargoes that are running up to the Port of Albany, we want to know what the cargoes are, but we know already. Hot asphalt, diesel fuel, chemical ships coming down. And it's not a ridiculous question in the Hudson Valley. You don't have to put all your cards in the Baltimore accident to have a valid question, because, and we have records of this as well, we can share. There was a ship back when Bakken was flowing. There was a ship called the Stina Primorsk, a huge tanker. I think 9 million, 10 million gallons. And she came under the railroad bridge at Castleton where there's also a highway bridge, and lost steering right at the Port of Queens. And lost steering. No steering. Hit the edge of the channel, tore open the outer hull. Pilots did an extraordinary job of regaining control and got her anchored at this bulge in the channel up at Stuyvesant. But we don't have to say a large ship could lose control. A large ship did lose control. If she lost control a mile further north, chances are high she would have hit the railroad bridge. So there, now Hudson 7's concerns, it's not like you disregard the impacts to an interstate highway system or an interstate rail system. That's not like you don't care. But the spill that could result, you care about. Okay, so getting involved with Congressman Ryan and the Coast Guard and saying, we want to maybe from the Newburgh Beacon Bridge up to the top of the system, we would like to do an inventory of, we'd like an assessment of bridge safety. And the whole thing behind it is how protected are we from an accident that would result in a spill. So it's a low effort initiative. Just asking the question gets work done. The last one related to anchorages that it's on my cheat sheet here is a bit of a stretch, but it's an opportunity for the Hudson 7. So you've stated your mission is to protect the drinking water for these communities. I offer that part is what's unique about this stretch of river from Kingston, Rhinebeck area south to here, is it happens to be where all the sturgeon are. And the sturgeon are, so the short, I can send you pictures of short-nosed sturgeon north of the Esopus Meadows Lighthouse right now in the winter. The bottom is covered with, I would say, thousands of overwintering short-nosed sturgeon right off you. The picture is hard to fathom because it's all these specks. The sonar shows them as white specks. It's a cloud of them. And then you all know that at Hyde Park anchorage is where the Atlantic sturgeon come back to spawn. So fish that were born here, when they mature at age 20, come back here. So they're part of your community. And so one of the things Hudson 7 could conceivably do is say, we serve the drinking water community. We also are aware that within the reach of our arms, these sturgeon reside. And this is a critical piece of work for them. And that's part of our community now that we're going to serve. And so meet with Heather Gearloff in DC. She has stated she doesn't want the Hyde Park anchorage to be in continued use or perhaps seasonally closed. It's already closed in winter, so they can deal without it in the winter. This is this has, dominoes, but we did a bunch of homework at Riverkeeper talking to maritime casualty specialists. And it's a fact that anchored vessels increase the risk of a collision. Mm-hmm. And we have data to support that. So you could make the argument, we don't want tankers full of hot asphalt at Hyde Park. Because if that Stina Primorsk loses her steering coming down past the Sopus Island and pins that anchored vessel in Hyde Park anchorage, we're drinking it. So the taking up the argument of the sturgeon is it ties directly to drinking water concerns, and it's an opportunity that no other group of communities have. So I put it out there for consideration. I'll pause.
And the sturgeon question, they're nowhere else but there.
Well, they are. No, they are. So that's a great question. The deep water, wide deep water off of Esopus, between Esopus and Rhine Cliff, is where these short nose overwinter.
Oh.
In the summer, they spread out and they don't go to sea. There are a few stragglers that go to sea. That's why their numbers are in good shape, because there's a moratorium on any harvest. And if you don't leave the protected zone, which is the Hudson, you're protected. Atlantic sturgeon, on the other hand, spawn here. The juveniles stay in the Hudson for about 5 years, and then the Atlantic sturgeon go to sea. Now out there's disease, mortality, bycatch, every kind of way of dying. And they wait, the females get to 18 to 20 before they come back to spawn the first time, and they come back every 2 or 3 years until they're 60 if they live. Right. So and the spawning, so the sturgeon, the Atlantics come up the river. And when the Tappan Zee Bridge was being replaced, they were getting hit by the crew boats, and we saw all kinds of dead sturgeon all over the beaches. It didn't nothing changed. We protested, nothing changed. But those fish are all coming here. And they spawn right off the Archers Point Boat Club. It's thick with them there in the late spring, early summer. And so they're within, like I say, I think of your communities as a potential, even if you just say you care about them, it already adds value. And it might be that someone like Heather Kiroff might want to work with the public to move forward on a restriction or change of anchorage. She said to us on the phone, when anchorage second round was in play, she said, I'd like to talk to the Coast Guard about selecting another place and closing Hyde Park. So the idea is out there, but it's not the kind of thing that DC is going to do without a ton of support, because they're going to catch hell in the industry. So,
John, is the Kingston hub not open anymore?
it's the new legislation says no.
Okay.
So if you see vessels anchored, we had that whole system. Now, I mean, I'm happy to receive them. I've given my personal email out. You could share it with anybody, but Riverkeeper is there. If you see a vessel anchored, the idea is to get on, the AIS service, find the name of the vessel, document it with a photograph, and we will share it with the Coast Guard.
Yeah.
They can anchor if they have a distress of some kind, and they notify the Coast Guard. And we want that, actually. We want them to anchor if there's a problem. We don't want them to tough it out. If they can't see, I mean, you can imagine coming up the river on radar, about to enter the narrow reaches north of Kingston Point, where the channel's only 400 feet wide. Down here, it's wide as hell. Up there, it's only 400 feet wide. So if they get up there and they're looking on radar, they're looking on, whatever weather service they have, and they see a squall line coming through where it's snowing, and they know they're not going to be able to see a thing. Pause. It's in all our interests for them to hold up, let the front come through, and then proceed. Under the legislation, they're supposed to notify the Coast Guard. The Coast Guard is trying. The Coast Guard has it's a VTS. It's called a Vessel Traffic Service in the Port of New York. It's a very sophisticated, like a flight control at an airport. They watch every vessel, and they tell them, for example, going in through by Bayonne Bridge, those vessels can't pass in there. So if a ship's coming in under the Verrazano and a vessel's about to leave Port Elizabeth, vessel traffic is telling them, hold at the dock. We got to get this one through. They assign anchorages. They are 100% control. So they've done a test rollout of VTS for the entire Hudson, and that's good. That's safer. So to answer your question, yes, they can. They're not supposed to. If they do, there should be a reason, and we should be telling the Coast Guard we've seen them, and we have to show that we continue to care. The thing about the Coast Guard is they rotate staff every 3 years. So all the people we fought anchorages one with, they're in Honolulu now for all we know, and so you got to keep it on the burner. So that's why in that first section, I'm saying everything we do, we should be talking to the Coast Guard, making sure they know we're interested. And then just stay on it, just stay on it, just stay on it.
And just connect one dot. The Drinking Water Source Protection Plan names as one of the highest priorities, working with the Coast Guard on a spill drill. So we also have that as currency to go forward and say, you're updating your plan. We have a plan. Let's make sure we.
And I bet $1,000 that they're gonna say the first drill has to be a desktop drill. But say to them, as you accept it, you say, yes, but we want your commitment that a year from now, we're gonna have a live drill and we'd like to have a simulant. They've never done it. Simulant is mock oil. And what's used by a lot, I mean, it's done, just not done here. They use oranges because oranges are visible. Oranges are non-toxic. They float, but they float awash, meaning right at the surface. So they're affected. They're not affected by wind like other simulants. They've used popcorn. They've used all kinds of things. But oranges behave like whatever's caught in those surface layers of river water. And you can, if you released X thousand of them, if you're diligent about your drilling, how many did you get back? Where did you get them back? Were they already in the marshes, or were they captured out in the river? A live spill drill with a simulant is going to look like an utter failure, but in doing it, it's success and it's progress. But you have to prove that the paper plans are only paper plans. That's what you have to prove to them. So, but yeah. So next item. So I don't know how many of you have heard of this initiative by Rebecca, our very own Rebecca. But it's now a 1.5 year old initiative, but it's just came public. And in just super briefly, she and Jen Epstein, also ex-river keeper, have researched public documents looking at what happens in landfills with the leachate that all landfills generate. Leachate, a new word for anybody? Leachate is the, rainwater percolating.
One moment. Paul, can you not hear? Does that mean that you are all having trouble hearing?
Everyone else can hear. I think it's just
Paul? I'm sorry. I'll text Paul.
Yeah, so leachate, just in a sentence, is as rainwater percolates down through these landfills, and some of them are, 30 stories tall, 2 miles long. You know what goes in the waste stream. Everything goes in the waste stream. Even stuff you're not supposed to put in the waste stream goes in the waste stream.
Mm-hmm.
And rainwater percolates down through that. And imagine the soup that comes out at the bottom. I doubt there's a way to make more polluted water on Earth than to percolate rain through a landfill. So what the landfills do is they put it in tank trucks. I'm generalizing. And they take it to wastewater treatment plants. And they blend it with the effluent and discharge it. That's been going on since the Clean Water Act. The idea of the Clean Water Act was to strangle down the polluters by making permits tighter and tighter and tighter and tighter until you got to the point where you'd eliminated a lot of these sources of pollution. But we haven't done that. We just permitted and permitted and permitted and permitted. So Rebecca and Jenna found that 90 million gallons of leachate is discharged into the Mohawk and the Hudson, coming downstream to, so drinking water intakes in the Mohawk, drinking water intakes here. We maintain that's not okay. And so this initiative is just starting. Rebecca's sharing material now, or has, or will. It's happening.
Yeah.
I can't think of a better partner than Hudson 7. Again, Rebecca, I'm volunteering as a noisemaker. Jen and Rebecca have the power of the data. But it's nothing. Their data and Hudson 7's authority can't beat that. So I urge you guys, when you see this material, I urge you guys to get involved. It's not, they're gonna do all the work. Just need to say, this matters to us. And you to put it in perspective, we're worried about barges that hold 4 million gallons. So every year, I can't do the math in my head, but that's a lot of barge loads of dumped soup that are happening by permit every year. We haven't had a barge spill at 4 million gallons. We worry about it. We should also be worried about the chronic systemic pollution that is occurring because, and the technology exists for on-site treatment at the landfills, but it's more money. So the people who drink the river water, the creatures who live in the river the landfills are exporting the cost of the leachate to the public and the creatures that live in the river. I think that once the public is aware of what they've turned up, there's going to be some action. We're getting emails from Oregon. And, this is a nationwide problem. And when people realize what's happening, they're just outraged. So I think it's a good vote. I'll add one thing to that is that leachate is only one of the problems it's a technique called industrial blending. So you have a business that makes something and you have industrial wastewater and you want to discharge that wastewater. So you have in that wastewater certain contaminants. Well, the Clean Water Act says you can't discharge them. It doesn't say you can't discharge any. It says you can't discharge these contaminants above these certain thresholds, parts per million, parts, depending on the product, parts per thousand, parts per trillion. So the landfills can't just dump it in the river. So what happens here, and the businesses that have industrial wastewater, what they're doing is they're taking their wastewater to a wastewater treatment plant. Big ones are better. Albany gets a lot of this stuff. Because the bigger the wastewater treatment plant, the higher the volume it's passing through, the more industrial wastewater, and I'm including leachate as industrial wastewater, they can add in, and those thresholds are not achieved. So the pollution that was too polluted, the contamination that is too polluted to discharge directly is discharged behind a magic curtain. And the river gets it all because sewer plants are not designed to take out the nasty stuff that's in a landfill. So I believe this is a great low effort, easy lift partnership for Hudson 7. I urge you to engage. And then once it's going to take a long time, it's going to take a long time. But the next layer is to say, okay, leachate, job done. Now let's start looking at other industrial blending that's happening in the Hudson and Mohawk watershed, because all of it, first of all, we want to know what it is. Second, we aren't approving it because we don't want to drink it. And so we want to know what it is, and then we're going to ask the state to do what the Clean Water Act actually stipulated, which is stop polluting the water. So good project.
These are also mentioned in the drinking water source protection plan, at least as concerns.
There you go.
I gave that to John too in advance so he could see what the priorities were in the source water protection plan for Hudson 7. And also to say, just so you know, that if the state is thinking about a right to know bill that would trace all the leachate coming from landfills to wastewater treatment plants for a communication. Well, it's in its early stages, but that would be helpful to be able to know where all the stuff is and where it's all going
Right.
in the state.
As long as they can't think that a right to know bill, it ends the problem.
No,
And as long-
it's a tool.
Yeah.
It's an arm of the octopus.
Right. And we learned in our sewage pollution right to know effort, which was great effort, but you have to sign up for the data.
Yeah.
It's not common knowledge. whatever they do here has to be common knowledge. You don't have to be a connoisseur to go look for that, data. So last item, if you have time, is just again another thought. I know that you were thinking and working on, because I see some of the communications I saw in my email, the concern over rail bridges. Great concern. And we also at Riverkeeper worked on that for a long time. And several of the bridges that we brought to the attention of the authorities have been fixed. The one up at Storm King and the one up near Blue Point, just across from Shadows Marina. So right there. It's a problem with how they were fixed, but they're fixed. So they're the chances of a spill. And I think if you looked at railroad accident data, a fair number happened at bridges. That data. So again, same strategy would be to identify the elected officials, contact the elected officials and say, we want to do an inventory of rail bridges and we want to know how well they're being maintained from Newburgh up to Selkirk. Because any accident that happens in this reach, we're going to drink. And it doesn't have to be a tributary in our exact geography of the Hudson 7 because the river flows. And we want to know where those bridges are. And we're going to request from the state and from the feds, the Railroad Administration, the latest inspections on all those bridges. Just ask already gets work done. You know, it's this kind of stuff that just by showing that a group of communities that represent the public and are seeing their elected officials who approve the budgets for the Railroad Administration, just asking is already getting work done. But last on bridges, again, once there was an inventory, the thing to do would be to ask the counties and the DC to do a drill with a simulant. What happens if the 5 rail cars full of X go off the rail bridge at Kingston, or harder ones to get to further inland where there's no road, but the stream is the road to the Hudson? How are you going to get the materials in? Where are you going to boom? Where are you going to pump? Where are you going to vac? So all of these are long projects. But again, just by asking, there's progress, and however far down the road we can get in is better than where we are now. So that's that.
Very good.
Thank you. Some ideas, and I don't know where I stand quite, but I'm very eager to work on stuff, on projects that have the potential to bear lots of fruit. I spent a lot of time at Riverkeeper, whack-a-mole, and that was valuable work. One property owner does something and you deal with it. In the scale of things, that's not really the best way to spend your time. We have to do it at Riverkeeper, but working with Hudson 7, because of Hudson 7's authority, it's very attractive to me. So I don't know how much I'll be able to do, but I'd like to work with you guys on these or other initiatives.
I know I, for one, would like to figure out a way to keep you engaged on those projects. And I think that's something that we should take up as a group to figure out how we can best utilize your skills and your knowledge, right, going forward.
Happy to talk about it.
So
and as obviously with the
so you're not leaving the country. You're going to be here.
Well, no guarantees, pal. No, my intention is to stick around for a while at least, except for visits to my daughter in Alaska.
There you go.
So just a refresher, so John was a technical advisor to the council for anchorages, and that came to an end as with. So that's in part John's here tonight, which thank you for driving up to sit with everyone.
It's a pleasure.
Yeah, thank
I really
Gary
admire,
wants to keep you.
admire this group. I admire what you guys are doing. It's historic, it's unique. And so I want to work with groups and on projects where there's a chance to do some big stuff.
Well, and as you alluded, Anchorage isn't over.
It's paused.
Right.
You can see why all the things I'm recommending keep the issue behind anchorages, which is still a concern, on the table for the conversation with the Coast Guard, who will be the brokers of anchorages round 3. So it's a good thing.
Yep.
That they don't think you've just shut down and everybody's happy. No, everybody's not happy. We're never happy. Well, that's my motto.
Right, so
Never happy.
I'm not sure how yet, where, when, why.
Yep.
But John, I think we'll be reaching out to you and trying to figure out a plan,
Yeah, been a pleasure.
to make this a project that we can attack. I mean, because we seem to do very well when we convalesce on a project.
Yeah.
That has the potential to bear real fruit. Right? And we get unified and we work together and we, all drive towards this same collective result.
Yeah.
Right?
And a lot of what we've done has been reactive because Anchorage rule is proposed. All right, so we got to get out all the guns and the cannons and we have to go to work. And it's easy to stop after that battle's won. These things I'm outlining are long initiatives that have the potential for many victories on the way towards the end victory.
My concern is how do you get those other elected officials, the Pat Ryans, et cetera, and keep them engaged because they tend to want to go to the next item as well.
Well, Ryan showed engagement on anchorages and everything related to that.
Right.
So I don't think it's going to be hard to get the door open with him.
Yeah.
And then if he signs on, others will. When Ryan and others see this Leachate report, they're going to flip. They're going to engage because it's big news and it's beyond comprehension that this is how we deal with this stuff.
And this is nationwide.
We believe it's nationwide. These guys have done, we don't know the extent that we've done, but
We've been fielding calls from Oregon, in 3 weeks. Yeah, it's happening everywhere with rivers. The backstop here is speedies. I don't know what the equivalent is in other states, but everybody seems to be, well, I shouldn't say everybody, but the people I'm talking to are all dealing with the same problem.
and in some places it's even, more sort of in your face. I mean, do you know off the top of your head the numbers for the Niagara? The amount of leachate being delivered into the Niagara River above those communities immediately downstream. You had numbers that you quoted to me the other day.
Niagara, which
Buffalo.
Oh, I don't.
It's just a massive amount of leachate being blended into the wastewater treatment plants immediately upstream.
So the question that came up before we started was, why was the decision made to go to wastewater treatment plants? Why wasn't the decision made, let it just aquifer into the ground? Why not? Why was that decision?
Well, the history of that, we don't have it. We weren't able to find exactly why. We have this report that the EPA put out sometime in the 1960s, and it sort of alludes to what happened, but we don't know. And we've talked to Earth Justice and other organizations. They don't know either why, except to imagine that the solution to pollution is dilution is part of the thinking. And
The industrial blend is what you're calling it.
they imagine that, but by bringing it to wastewater treatment plants and mixing it with effluent and dispersing it into the environment, it would break up over time, but legacy chemicals don't work that way.
Right, there are two other thoughts. One is, since the Clean Water Act the pollution, when sewer plants were built, they were built to deal with poop. And a lot of the stuff we're dealing with now may have been chemicals that were in use, but our awareness of them as a hazard was not there at all. So you see in the last few years, PFAS is everything is PFAS. 5 years ago, nobody could spell PFAS. And so time goes on. So 5 years from now, there'll be more and more. So the answer, I think, to your question is it was recognized that the leachate was going to be horrible for groundwater in the vicinity of the landfill. So initially, landfills weren't even lined. And then they saw that this stuff was migrating to wells, residential, whatever wells around the landfills. So the idea of taking it in trucks was to get it away from the landfill so the landfill could stay in business. Because having pollution migrate in the ground from the landfill was a sure way that it was going to get shut down. So protect the landfill by making new landfills with a liner. And they go to great lengths to keep the leachate from escaping locally. But then they take it in a truck. So the local community now says, well, it's gone, whatever. I don't know where it went. And now it's and if you think about it, sorry, one more sentence. What other industries are there discharging vast amounts of water into a river where you could blend contaminants in and get under regulatory thresholds? There aren't any other huge discharges of water. That's what I believe is the answer to your question from my outside view, but it makes sense, right? Right?
Yeah.
So anyway,
We're good.
I would say it's all fun stuff, except it's horrible. But it's fun. What I love about what Jen and Rebecca have done is this is raw initiative. This is raw initiative. They've identified through research this disgusting, systematic, society-wide problem. And they've decided that they're going to try to fight it.
Does Shannon have a question?
Yeah.
Shannon?
I just wanted to add that, if this is like an advocacy project that the Hudson 7 is going to take on, I think another thing to consider with landfill leachate is that oftentimes a significant portion of these contaminants end up in the leachate due to biosolids being landfilled, biosolids from wastewater treatment plants, which are a very rich source of heavy metals, pharmaceuticals, PFAS. The majority of that is being landfilled. And because those chemicals are sort of like in a more digested form than sort of like being attached to a food wrapper, they more easily release. And so we know that a very significant portion of landfill leachate contamination is coming from the biosolid disposal in landfills. So I know that right now DEC is kind of figuring out some new biosolids regulations. So it might be worth also simultaneously thinking about, the biosolids regs and thinking through that being such a significant contributor to the landfill leachate.
All right, we have 5 minutes. Thank you, John. I think that was astounding. So I appreciate.
All right, good.
I don't know how everybody else.
Food for thought.
It's a lot to digest as like a fire hose you are.
And I'll map it out for you.
Yeah.
I'll map out the suggestions
Yeah.
in a way that you can really
Right.
think about them and prioritize them with the GWSP2 work, because it's right in line
Right.
with our goals and so
It's the right time.
Hudson can work.
Yeah.
Hudson 7.
Yeah. All right. So I don't know in terms of important business that we need to conduct yet for in the last 5 minutes.
Well, there's a couple of things I could raise and you could decide how to do it. So we do have to approve the minutes. We want to hear the treasurer's report. There is an action that there is a letter that the Hudson 7 could consider the DEC to get them to open their rulemaking process for regulations for landfill leachate. If you want to take that up, that's in the communications. Could you mute that? Or mute your television, your YouTube?
Oh,
Elizabeth,
Yes,
can you mute YouTube when you're on? We can hear a delay. There you go.
all right, so why don't we get through some of this business that,
And the only thing I would say is if you wanted just to run down all the transitions of council members, technical advisors.
I think that's important.
Yeah.
I think anything else I'm gonna put on hold. But I would like to make a motion to approve the minutes from November 13th, 2024.
so moved.
Favor, say aye.
Aye.
Right. I'd like to, Elizabeth, can you give us a quick treasurer's report?
Sure can. Total funds collected in 2024 were $75,986.45. There were $75,000 in dues, and we accrued $986.45 in interest. I do not expect we'll have that much this year. Our total expenditures were $75,325.65. That was $75,000 for a coordinator, $175.65 to reimburse the Village of Rhinebeck for their payment for our website hosting, and $150 for a ticket for the Hudson River watershed. Balance as of 12/31/24 is $620.02. I do want to note that I have a discrepancy in my accounting. I show $660.80. However, I did not start receiving bank statements until November, so there is no way that I can adequately audit this. I don't know if the bank didn't charge us for something or mislabeled a deposit, which they did with the Hudson River watershed ticket. So I have a $60,000 discrepancy. I put this in writing and sent all of the backup, the check log, the last bank statement, and this report to the executive committee and our coordinator. I also just want to note that as of today, we've collected $10,000 in 2025 dues from the Village of Rhinebeck, the Town of Rhinebeck, the Town of Lloyd, and the Village of Esopus. That's all I have to say.
Right, thank you. I think the next thing I want to do is go to changes.
Yeah.
Okay.
You want me to walk through them?
Yes, please.
So it's a lot of movement, and so Lynn Ruggiero is leaving the council, has left the council, and Eric Weinstock is willing to come in as the new alternate member of the council, and Liz is working right now to get a resolution passed on January the 13th. Thank you, Liz. Thank you, Eric.
Sure, glad to help.
It's wonderful. Town of Poughkeepsie, Supervisor Edwards is, you want to give that update? Or do you-
No, she's decided his step down her schedule is just too much. So Ryan Stiles, the 5th Ward council person, is going to be taking her place, and he'll be joining us from Zoom.
And they're in the midst of also.
Yeah,
moving
that's
resolution.
tonight.
Great,
Oh.
so we're moving to get everything clear. Russell Gilmore is stepping back from the town of Lloyd. And the supervisor there is considering who to replace Russell with. Emily Svensson, who was a founding member, voting member, technical advisor, is stepping away too. She's so busy. So she's left this year, which means we have room for another technical advisor, FYI, to look and see where and how that all lands. And Mark Schaff wrote to us from the town of Lloyd, who was the 1A operator for the town of Lloyd drinking water plant and it's being replaced by William Van Cleek. Nick, and maybe we could reach out to William and invite him to the upcoming wastewater treatment plant committee meeting and get to know him.
Yeah.
It's very nice. So Mark connected me with William. I have his contact info.
Okay.
And then there is a vacant secretary
Right.
FOIL officer seat that we need to fill at some point if anybody wants to join me. I do all of this. Yeah. It's in the role is being an executive board member. So if you're interested.
Yes, if anybody's interested in fulfilling that role, please let it be known. And be part of the executive board. All right. Pretty much exhausted our time. Is there any other important business that anybody would like to bring up before we close the meeting?
We had talked about the DW SP2 and about doing presentations to the different municipalities. Yes. Wanted to just bring up carry from the last meeting that Hyde Park is interested in a present. You had said you wanted to fine tune it and get it to a point where it was presentable.
Yeah, not just me, but yeah, so Mike, I think we're meeting in a couple of days. Mike's convening us to get a presentation together and then we can answer all of the interest, I think.
The solid slides are nice.
Yeah.
Did a great job.
So one of our plans was kind of similar tonight was to dedicate a lot of time to the DWSP2 at this meeting, so we can spend a lot of time to dive down into it as much as possible, rather than just having a 5-minute update on it like we've been doing. Dedicated an hour to have that discussion.
Okay.
So,
And just so I can report back, are you thinking January, February, March?
I'm gonna turn to Mike and see, I can show up in Hyde Park easier than maybe he can.
I don't see any reason why it would have to be later than maybe mid-February, but we could figure out a specific date.
So you think February?
Yeah, maybe like
February is the 10th, I think.
I thought we were going to wait for the approval before we kind of rolled it out to the municipality, so.
yeah,
No?
we're kind of in the middle of figuring out specifically how we're going to do that. Yeah, we haven't exactly decided yet.
Yeah, okay.
So it sounds like February or March.
Yeah. There's a month or two. If they decide to go down through the path of waiting for the approval, it'd be a month or so until we get that done.
Okay, I'll pass that on.
Sorry.
Okay,
No, it's fine. I
Reading it
just want to be able to speak intelligently.
but I mean, is that of interest to everybody to schedule time to really do a deep dive into DWSP2 here?
For February.
Yeah. Okay,
Sure.
all right, so that's what we'll do for the February meeting.
No letter to the DEC.
What?
No letter to ask the DEC to do rulemaking. It's up to you.
This is at the HA loophole.
Yeah.
I think I want to wait. I'm going to do that next. Okay.
All right, say on that, DEC's already said that they are working on it and it's on their agenda, so it's not a hard ask, I think, just to have that bit of data.
Well, it's up to you guys. I mean, this is a council. You can make a decision if you would let them move it forward.
Have they said they're working on it, or they state they?
It's in the new agenda
Yeah.
for 2025.
And I
Third year
reached
in a
out,
row.
and I
So you
reached
want
out
to
to
float a letter to show
the,
support for them.
To support the DEC to move forward with opening the rulemaking, which is urging them to create new regulations, which means a 90-day public comment period of 60 days.
Oh, yeah.
Will give everybody a chance to review the language and to comment on it, to get better regulations and perhaps money, mandated funds, who knows where this could go to help improve the situation.
Could we draft a letter and attach it to the February agenda with materials so we could review it and then vote on it?
Or whatever.
That's what I think we should do. Exactly.
Sounds good. Happy to do that.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right. So let's put that one on for February.
got it. Thank you.
All right. I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everyone. Enjoy.
Happy New Year. Happy New Year.
Hi, everyone.